Right, well what the 3 sieves, a oil strainer and an oil strainer with the strainer removed and a little piece of metal have in common. Well, nothing at the moment, but what I'm going to try and do here is repair the oil sieve. Now you can see there it's got a bit of a tear in the strainer, and I wouldn't like to put that back in case metal came adrift and ended up going up through the engine. So I had a couple of these, so I've managed to unpick the mesh material out from around the circumference there just by levering up with a screwdriver that fold over edge. Now the new ones that you can buy actually have a little bridge that sits over the oil inlet area, and I figure that's to keep the mesh away from the inlet and probably go some way to preventing oil starvation. So I've made up that little bridge to modify this old oil strainer, and what I'm going to do is from these 3 strainers I'm going to endeavour to unpick the mesh out of that, which shouldn't be all too hard, and then fit it back into the old base for the oil strainer that I had, and hopefully I'll be able to repair this thing. Now these things are, to buy a new one, are $74. I bought those 3 strainers with the stainless steel mesh at the cheapie shop for $9. So if this little exercise is successful, I've saved myself 70 Australian dollars, so I'll be pretty happy with that. So what I intend to do is put a little tack weld there and there in the appropriate place and secure that, and then I'll unpick that mesh and see how we go with it, and I'll show you what we end up with if it's successful. Well, I'll show you what we end up with if it's not successful as well, I guess. Yes, so with the oil strainer, when all else fails, you buy a new one. So I got this one in from England at a reasonable price, together with a few other bits and pieces. So now I can go ahead and rebuild the rest of this engine. I've got everything I need now. So we'll get on with it and show you what's going on along the way. Right, well I didn't take any before shots of this little project. I wasn't really too confident that it would work out, but needless to say, I've got a fairly decent result here. This front chassis extension, it was all chopped up and mangled. The front sections were out on an angle like that on both sides, was quite bent up. This bracket here was completely missing. It had been oxyed off, as had both the back sections. they'd been oxyed off and were totally missing, both sides. So I thought I'd put in a day or two and see how I could see if I could fix the thing up. So I got a drawing off Barney's site, which was quite detailed in the measurements, so that was a big help. And from what I had and from that drawing, I made up a cardboard template of the side arms, and from that I was able to just cut a section out of 2mm plate for that area there. Now once I got that on, the whole thing seemed like it was going to be a bit of a success. So what I ended up doing was I removed that bracket there and took this side arm off completely. It was no big deal because that was missing, and by taking that off I was able to straighten it out. It was quite badly bent all up in this area here. It was curled over and bent around, as was that side. I didn't bother taking that side off because that would have entailed removing that bracket, and I managed to do this side in situ. This little bracket here I made up off that little cardboard template, which I took off the one on that side and reversed it and trimmed it all up, and that worked out quite well. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with that. I wasn't expecting to be able to do it. I did the final weld up. I actually bolted it to the chassis to make sure it was all in line. I did some cross measurements to make sure it wasn't out of alignment, and all those measurements came up pretty much exact to the 1/16 of an inch or so, so that was pretty good. So what I'll do now is sandblast that and put a bit of primer filler on it, and it'll be a job, I think, quite well done. Just as a side issue, I've also made up that little bracket for mounting the coil. That mounts onto the engine mount on the right hand side on those 3 holes there, and that was just a simple little 20-minute, half-hour job, so got that out of the way as well. Yeah, so unlike the experiment with the oil pickup strainer, I've had a win on this occasion. So thanks for your interest, and we'll see what I can get up to from here in the scheme of things. Right, there it all is, sandblasted and primed. Turned out reasonably well. A few little dents and things where I've had to hammer it out. Don't know whether you can see them down in there or not, but there are a few there. So if the camera's not picking them up, then I guess once it's painted in a satin, it'll probably be all looking okay. So success on that one.